Welcome to another episode of Read All About It. I'm your host, Reed. Today I'm going to do another after action recap, this time from the Calwell Little Hunt on the Prairie, which was a two-day National Rifle League hunter match that was held in Decorah, Iowa here about 10 days ago now. I RO'd it. I didn't shoot it. My daughter Annika shot it. I coached her through it. And she shot really well. She took third in factory. She had her personal best. She did 99% of everything on her own. She found targets. She ranged targets. I think I pointed out maybe 2 or 3 targets to her, and I deployed her tripod for her twice. Other than that, she did everything herself, and she did phenomenal. She shot really great. I was just extremely proud of her, and with her shooting young guns, I can coach her. She is not eligible for a trophy, so she was bummed that she didn't get the third place factory trophy. But so I think the next match she shoots, she doesn't want me to register for her for young guns, and she wants to try her first match solo. But anyway, I wanted to kind of break down the stage that, or at least one of the stages that we RO'd. We RO'd stage 8 and stage 16 at the Calwell Little Hunt on the Prairie. Today I'm going to focus mainly on 8. I'll probably give a little recap on 16, but 16 was pretty straightforward, so there was less nuance to it. But anyway, so we were a 1 position 4 target stage. It was 4 bobcats near to far. The bobcats were ranged at 330, 340, 390, and about 470 yards. I've got 3 of them laid out here on my sweet picture that I drew. It's not obviously a representation of what the actual targets look like, but it's a general layout of the first 3 targets, because I'm going to kind of talk about what happened to a lot of competitors as they came through and where they messed up. But up here at the top, I've laid out what the shooting position kind of looked like. So we were on a side hill. So to your left was higher than to the right. The sighting pin was here behind this tree. Jim had a fallen branch that he had ratchet strapped to the tree. The branch, all the bark was no longer on the branch, so it was pretty slippery. And then there's a fork up at the top, and a branch that ran higher and a branch that ran lower. And there was a little, what used to be a branch here that had been cut off relatively flush with the branch. And then our direction of fire was, in this general orientation down through the valley. There's a creek bottom down there where the targets were. So as you come up, there was about a 50-yard run, walk, whatever you wanted to do, but there's about 50 yards from the holding area and sighting and starting position to the sighting pin and shooting position. And as you come up, there was a couple different ways you could approach how you were going to shoot it. You did have to get elevation to be able to see over the crest of the hill. The elevation required was essentially standing, not a high kneeling or anything like that. You had to be standing, but from about 4 feet above, you could see all the targets and engage them. And this branch was approximately about 4 feet off the ground. A lot of people elected to shoot it off of the branch and try to tripod rear, and the remaining tried to shoot it off the tripod. I saw people execute both very effectively, and I saw people struggle at both as well. The biggest thing I saw from building a shooting position that people struggled with was the nature that we were on a side hill, and this goes for downhill, uphill, anything that isn't flat. In PRS, I feel like we engage all our positions, at least from a ground standpoint, as relatively level. It may be sloping away slightly or something like that, but in general, it's relatively flat terrain. Where this, if you are at a standing height with your tripod and your tripod base, you're probably encompassing a, from one leg to the other, 3 to 3.5 feet. That circumference of your tripod is navigating, and the difference from your left leg to your right leg would have been 8 to 12 inches, probably in height discrepancy. And I saw a lot of people struggle with that side hill nature of it, because whether you were shooting it tripod rear or from the tripod, I saw a lot of people struggle and commit to a poor deployment of the tripod in both cases. So in my other video, adding weight to the tripod, shooting tripod more accurately for free is, I think, kind of what I titled it. But when you deploy your tripod, whether you shoot, so if you're shooting with tripod rear, you're typically extending the legs all the way out, so you have the most real estate and the widest base and everything to shoot with. And so generally that works really, really well on relatively flat ground. But when you're talking about bringing, I apologize if you can hear the train, there's a train rolling through town right now, but so if you're shooting tripod rear and you're right-handed, you're going to come through the tripod like this, and you've got your gun propped up on this branch. And so I would be standing on the higher side of the hill. So essentially, your tripod is like this, trying to fall away from you. So then your stability and your wobble and what you're using that tripod rear for is greatly hindered. So for that, some people extended out their leg so it would be higher. But I also saw a lot of, when people would try to deploy that technique, they couldn't put much pressure into the leg. And I saw a lot of misses as a result of that. I think the better solution there would have been to take your two opposite legs and shorten them so that the plate on the top is relatively level to gravity, and that's going to give you the best base for that tripod rear. And the same thing goes with when you were shooting off of your tripod. The shooters struggled for the same reason. They committed, they had already deployed their tripod and they just committed to it rather than fixing it, rather than taking the 10, 15 seconds that it would take to either unmount your rifle, set it on the ground, and adjust the leg on your tripod, or do it with the rifle on there, and make the appropriate corrections so that you want this plate as level as you can make it quickly, so that your rifle is in, and the weight is in the center of the tripod legs. The whole purpose of that is it's equally dispersing the weight. it's absorbing recoil. It's just doing what it's supposed to do and support your gun. What happened was a lot of people were uphill like this, and essentially they took their tripod and made it a perpendicular bipod where the leftmost leg was doing some support, but very minimally. And you'd see a lot of people, that leg would lift up off the ground and just be hovering, and they would literally be shooting it with a really tall perpendicular bipod, and that would induce a ton of lateral wobble in that sight picture, and I saw a lot of misses due to that. So I think the takeaway there from building a stable shooting position on uneven terrain like that is to take the appropriate time to get your tripod set so that you are as level as you can be with the tripod in a neutral position. And taking that time up front, you're going to make that up in the back end because you're going to be able to shoot so much faster with a stable position. You're not going to be fighting wobble and taking 15, 20 seconds to execute a shot. When you have a stable position, you can rip off those 4 rounds and get 4 good hits and see your impacts in 30 seconds rather than 2 minutes. So that's my takeaway from building a shooting position. The other is from acquiring the targets and asking questions. Okay, so depending on what time of day you came through our stage, it mattered as to what targets were difficult to find. So targets 1 and 3 were always pretty apparent. The placard was very bright and open. The sun was shining, and it popped. Directly left of it, in the wide open, was a big black bobcat. Easy to see with the naked eye, and you could discern that's a target that is part of my stage with the naked eye. So you come up, you see that ape. As soon as you get into your glass, this target 3 is also in your field of view, also visible with the naked eye. Never was in a shadow, but it is on the left side of the tree, and there was some branches that hung down from this tree behind the target. A lot of people thought it was in front of the target, but indeed it was behind the target. And then up here is target 4 in front of a cedar tree. And so first thing in the morning, target 4 was hard to see because we were looking back to the east. It was in front of a cedar tree, so on the west side of a cedar tree. So the cedar tree casted a shadow on that 4th target first thing in the morning. After about the first half hour, it came into sunlight and was relatively easy to spot. As the day got further along and the sun got past, straight up in the sky, this target 2 that was on the left side of a tree, so the east side of a tree, with several other trees over here as well, started to cast a shadow on target 2, and target 2 became more difficult to find. There were also several other targets from other stages that were visible in our shooting area. There was a coyote from day 2 that was visible. So stage 8 was part of day 1's course of fire. This coyote was part of day 2. You could see the placard for it. It was 13, and that was your first target for 13. But I still had several people ask me if that was one of our targets. It generally looked a little bit like our bobcats, but you could definitely tell that it wasn't. The people that did ask about it were pretty sure that it wasn't, but wanted to just confirm, which was fine. And then up and to the right from target 3, there was a doe that was part of day 2 as well. And that doe looked like it was kind of sitting on its butt and rising up out of the grass. there were several people that thought that was one of our bobcats. So what generally happened as far as trying to find targets was people would see target 1, and when they were in the glass, target 3 was also in your field of view. Target 2 likely was as well, but it didn't pop as much. It didn't draw your eye. And so people would see this. These first 3 targets were oriented with their nose pointed to the left. The 4th target was oriented with its nose pointed to the right. A lot of people asked a question similar to, is target 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever left of the tree with its nose pointed to the left, right? And so with branches hanging down or something like that. And I couldn't in good conscience say yes to that, while it might have, if they asked target 2, it would also fit target 2, because target 2 was left of the tree with the target nose pointed left, and there were branches behind that as well. So if they asked if it was target 2, I couldn't in good conscience say yes or no to that. My reply to those questions were, that description fits multiple targets in your array. So I didn't feel good trying to trick them and say, yep, that's one of your targets, when I know they had skipped over target 2, and they had plenty of time. I'm not there to make it any more difficult or help anyone more than I help another competitor or anything like that. I gave the same replies to everybody that asked that question. So my takeaway on that is to use your placard as a clock face, right? You don't have to give me a distance. There's only going to be one target that is at 1 o'clock of the placard. There's only going to be one target that's 11 o'clock from the placard. There's only going to be one target that's 12 o'clock from the placard. Whatever that is. And so the placard here, if you ask, is target 1 left of the placard at 9 o'clock? Yes. All right. I know that now. And then you look up and you see this one, and you range it and you see that it's only 50 yards apart. More than likely, in your mind, you're thinking that's target 2, because they're not super far apart. They're only a couple tenths in dope and 50 yards. So your mind automatically goes, all right, I need to find target 3 because I found 1 and 2. So then you go up and you spot that bobcat at target 4 that is, at 470 yards, and you think, okay, I've found 3 of the 4, and there's about 100-yard gap between 3 and 4. So there, my one that I'm missing likely could be in that gap. So you start scanning, and that's when you come across this doe that's rising up out of the grass. It's bladed to us a little bit. You can't discern if it has the ears of a bobcat or whatever. You just see a black target rising up out of the grass that's roughly the same length as the bobcats that you just found. And if you didn't ask a clarifying question, if you didn't figure out that that's not one of your targets, when you shoot target 1, impact, all right, you go up here, target 2, you shoot, you impact. I don't call impact. You ask, that was a hit. I said, it was, but it wasn't target 2. And then you're like, oh, shoot. So then you go over and you shoot this one as target 2, thinking, well, maybe it's closer than that, or maybe they're just splitting hairs. And so you shoot that one and it goes a little low underneath. No call. Come back, shoot target 3, full points, shoot target 4, where you had plenty of time, and if you asked the right questions, you could have gotten to the answer. These two were 10 yards apart in distance and depth, but about 30 or 40 yards laterally apart. And so we're relatively easy to find. And so, yeah, those are the takeaways that I have from stage 8 on day 1, is use your placard as your clock face to give the RO a reference as to, because when you say, is target 2 left of the tree with branches hanging down behind it, that's going to fit, in all reality, probably multiple targets in your array, and we can't, in good conscience say yes to that, or we're going to say yes to that, and you're going to have received correct but not helpful information. And so asking the right questions in the right way. So use your placard as a clock face and ask about the reference of those targets in relation to the placard. Because that is essentially the only thing that us as the RO and you as the shooter have as clear knowledge as to what you're talking about. Because when you say the tree, the pine tree, I'm not a botanist, you may be. So when you say the juniper, the cedar, the pine tree, the Black Hills spruce, the oak, the elm, those types of things, I may or may not know what you're talking about. But when you say placard, I know what we're talking about, stage 8, placard 8. It's the only one out there. I know right where it is, and you can use that as a reference. So give us the placard with a clock face and, depth or range to the target. That's going to narrow things down a lot quicker for you. That's how I would start phrasing all of your questions, as far as clarifying questions to understand whether you found what target. So placard 8 left at 9 o'clock, target 1. Placard 8, 1 o'clock, target 2. Placard 8, 11 o'clock, target 3. And at 12 o'clock was target 4. And you probably don't need to ask that many clarifying questions because you're usually probably only hung up on one. But using that as your reference and as your guide to direct your RO about your question is going to save you a lot of time, because when you mess up that question and you either get a yes or a no, or I can't answer that, then you're sitting there in your mind trying to think of a better way to word it, more description, which isn't really what we need. I know exactly what you were talking about, but I can't say yes or no to it because either the vagueness of your question, how much of the field of view it might rule out, or things like that. So just using that clock face from your placard, I think, will generally help you communicate, not only to the RO, but communicate it to your teammate as well. And that, when I watch teams, good teams communicate effectively. They are on the same page. They're speaking the same language, and they communicate effectively. And that saves them so much time. I watched so many teams they're both in their glass, and they're trying to describe what they're looking at, where if they just came back and said, all right, you see the placard. Yep. How can you not? Because it's staring you right in the face. Okay, go up at 11 o'clock from there and you'll see a target. And, the ones that do things similar to that, they get on their guns a lot faster. They end up with higher scores. They waste less time so that you can feel less rushed when you're deploying your tripod, when you're trying to build a stable shooting position. With this game, that is a portion of the whole discipline, which is why I love it, is it mashes all these different skill sets together. Finding targets, ranging targets, using your gear and deploying your gear, managing time under stress, and executing, good shots. It's all part of the sport, and those that win do all the facets very well, including the communication portion. So those are my takeaways from stage 8. With stage 16, it was offhand. There was 4 targets, all within a 10-yard kind of circle of each other. It was standing offhand, 4 12-inch circles. This is simulating Jim C's moose hunt that he had a couple years ago, where he shot his moose offhand in the bush, and he wanted to see if we possessed the godlike skills that are Jim C. And so he designed this stage. I watched a lot of people come through there, and a lot of people 0, 1, 2, a couple of 3s, and a lot of people missing by a lot. Not like just off the edge, but feet, high, low, left, right. So I think we've become very, very complacent on having support devices, whether that's improvised support from our surroundings or tripods or whatever, our game changers and the like, which is good. I want everybody to know how to build stable positions, because that's how you take ethical shots at game in the field. But there are instances where you might feel overconfident because that animal is standing there at 80 yards staring directly at you after you bumped it out of its bed and it bounded off a couple, 2, 3 steps, didn't know what you were, so it stops there for 15 seconds and presents you with a broadside shot. The vast majority of us will take that shot because we think that's not far, I can execute that just fine. So you'll pull up and you'll try to take that shot. So my takeaway there is we need a lot of practice in that. So I used to shoot a lot of 3-gun. How I shot standing offhand with a 223 AR, say you had a plate rack with 6 or 8 inch plates down there at 75, 80 yards. You'd be asked to shoot those offhand with relative frequency. I would shoot those on lower magnification, 3 to 4 power typically, and with intentional movement. And what that means is I'm trying to shoot in a rhythm, and with an AR it's obviously different, but if you have 6 plates on a plate rack and you're trying to shoot those in sequence as quickly as you can. Now, it didn't matter if plate 6 fell before plate 4 or anything like that. You just had to clear the plate rack. But I'm drawing that rifle across those plates from left to right. I'm prepping the trigger as I hit the left edge of that plate, and I'm breaking the shot as I'm coming across. And then I reset the trigger, and I'm moving the gun slowly but deliberately across that plate rack. I have a cadence of, about 3/4 of a second in between shots. Bang, bang, bang. And you're working your way all the way across. And even if you miss, you're not stopping that movement and going back and resetting. You're just continuing with that cadence. and trying to clean it up. And then if you get that last one, you're doing the same thing where you're moving that gun through the target. And that's going to provide a much more stable sight picture, where if you're standing there trying to hold everything super duper steady, you're going to watch that rifle float around. You're breathing and your heartbeat's going. But if you're intentionally driving that gun through those targets, you're going to just see that reticle just move in a flat line, whether that's from down up, top to bottom, left to right, top corner to bottom corner, whatever it is. You'll find that reticle moves smoothly through there, and you can predict that shot as you're moving through that. That's why if you're shooting at a running deer in the Iowa woods during shotgun season, when that deer's running, you're able to track it very smoothly with your gun. Same thing wing shooting for pheasants or ducks or whatever. When you're tracking that gun, your muzzle's not floating up and down. It's tracing in a smooth line across the sky. Same thing goes for shooting offhand with, a 12-pound rifle. If you can draw that gun slowly but smoothly and predict your trigger press, you're going to do very well. One of the best shooters that I saw shoot that stage were Michael O'Brien and Varick Beasy, both of which have extensive 3-gun resumes from the past. Varick still shoots a ton of 3-gun. And they know how to shoot offhand rifle because they did it a lot. Most of us that come from PRS and or NRL hunter or just hunting in general, we don't practice offhand rifle shooting, and we don't know how to do it. So it's simply a matter of being coached and understanding the technique. I'm not saying right out of the gate you're going to be able to deploy the technique flawlessly, but you're going to have a better opportunity. It's something I would go and spend a little time at the range, set up a plate at 100 yards, and just, try that. Try starting out to the left or to the right, whatever's comfortable, suits your eye. Dial down to 4 to 6 power, something like that, and take your 12 or 16 pound gun and try it. I think you'll find it's easier. You'll get a higher hit percentage than if you're just standing there, trying to do the NRA high power stance, because that I feel takes much more discipline and practice and technique than driving the gun on that size of a target at that distance, versus trying to shoot, X rings at 600 meters. So with that, that's kind of my match recap. It was a great match. I want to thank Jim C. for all he's done for the shooting community. This was his last match, and precision rifle shooting in general in Iowa and the Midwest wouldn't be where it is today without Jim. I've been shooting his matches since I think I started shooting in 2017 or 16. And when he started at Sure Shot, we did PRS matches there. My daughter Annika started coming with me to matches when she was 9. She's been around, our shooting community. You guys have been great to her. She loves coming to matches. She loves working matches. And so, when I only get every other weekend with her, having these activities and the bond that we have through the shooting sports has meant a ton to me. So it's not just, banging steel targets at distance for me. It's much deeper than that. And, I owe a great deal of gratitude to Jim C and what he's done for shooting in the Midwest, PRS, NRL Hunter, the Border Wars Rifle Series, my very first trophy I ever won, the Rebel Resistance team matches. Those were a ton of fun. I hope somebody picks those up and does some more of those. But yeah, I owe a lot of gratitude for this hobby and what the sport is in our area to Jim C. He is a polarizing figure if you've ever met him, but everything he does is for safety. If he's gotten on your ass, it's because of safety related concerns, because it's all too easy in today's world to get a range shut down or something like that to happen if there were an accident or if a bullet leaves the range or whatever it is. People are just looking for excuses to go and attack us and our passion. So for that, thank you, Jim. And if you see him out there, tell him thanks as well. I'm sure he'll still shoot some matches. He'll be a part of the community, I'm assuming, going forward, but in a more leisurely role than as match director. So with that, I will sign off. If you've liked this content, please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any requests for videos you'd like me to do in the future, or you want to hear my opinion about certain things, I'm happy to weigh in on it, give you my 2 cents. It's worth what you paid for it, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you implemented some of the things I talked about today, I think you'd see your scores improve. And then subsequently too, when I RO'd, I didn't see anybody implement what I talked about from hanging weight from the hook. Now, a lot of people shoot leveling heads and stuff and don't have the hook, but hanging your bag from there simply adds some weight, and it'd be an easy way to test to see if your tripod is level. You're going to see that start wobbling and things. The more weight you bias towards the top, it's going to want to tip more. And so when you get it all in the center, though, it sits rock solid and is super stable. So with that, as I've said like 3 times already, but we'll sign off. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and we'll catch you on the next one.